Hello, everyone, and welcome to my 2020 edition of the Salary Efficiency Breakdown. I did one of these last year. If you want to go take a look at that for 2019, a refresher on how this works. So first off, by the way, I'm streaming this, so I'm going to take breaks to interact with Twitch chat a little bit while I'm recording it, but some of that might make it in the video. I apologize if it does, but whatever. Just subscribe to my Twitch because then you won't have to deal with it. Secondly, a reminder for how this works. So last year in 2019, in spring and maybe in summer, but I've only ever done this in spring, salary information is released to Riot and I guess the teams, whatever. Anyway, it gets out there about what each of the teams is spending on salaries, and and it's a total salary. So it's not like, hey, we know which individual player makes. It's more, here's how much all 10 teams have spent on total LCS salary this year, their annual salary cost. So what we do in these videos is I now have that number for each of the different teams. I don't reveal the number because last year my philosophy was that would, I think, have a pretty profound impact on the industry. I don't know what the repercussions of that would be, so I want to kind of like baby step this information out there because I think it's not correct for me to make the decision to just reveal all this stuff on my own. And perhaps with increased transparency, we're starting to hear more player salaries, etc. We'll do more than that. But for the time being, we don't reveal the exact number. What we do is I rank the teams by their efficiency in order, and basically by win. So I take regular split, which was spring split, the 18 games, and you take the total number of salary, and then you divide it by the number of wins that they had, and you get a number that's like how many per win. I don't include tiebreakers because that makes the data weird. I don't include playoffs because that makes the data weird. If you guys want to give them like extra points, or you want to say, well, clearly like this team should be more because they made it in playoffs and somebody else didn't, whatever, that's fine. That's on you. Other people could do that, and people who take issue with the way that I'm disseminating this information can go do their own work to get it, because I don't care. Also, shout out to Alienware. Did I shout out Alienware yet? They are very clearly sponsoring everything I do. So the interesting thing about this year is now we've got 1 year's worth of data on it, and a decision that I have made is to reveal the last year's salary numbers, which I did not reveal, for the 3 teams that are no longer in the LCS. So those teams being Clutch, Echo Fox, and Optic. Let's go ahead and take a flashback really quickly to the, where is this picture? I have a screenshot from my video last year. Oh yeah. So first off, I feel like I look considerably better now. Secondly, this is how the teams were ranked last year in the by efficiency. If you recall, 100T had a pretty expensive roster, and they were just not putting up results in spring, so that's how we got here. Again, this was spring. C9 did very well, but the interesting thing to remember now in retrospect, which we did not know at the time, was that C9 had basically, and Jack's in the Twitch chat, so I'm saying this in front of him, but it is an important data point to remember. C9 was essentially playing an illegal roster in that they had players that were under equity contracts that were not, allowed underneath LCS rules, and so their salaries were obviously going to be lower because the equity package was part of it. So that is probably part of the reason why they ended up in that place. The other thing to remember is well, I guess that raises the next point, right? Which is the numbers that I have do not necessarily reflect player equity and the value of that. They don't reflect coaches, etc. So this data is like somewhat imperfect in that I don't have all of the data. I can't figure out what Bjergsen's equity valuation is. We know he has equity, so we don't really know how that plays into the TSM salary stuff, etc. So we just do what we do with the data that we have, which I think is still pretty substantial and interesting, and draw some conclusions. So that was, once more, this was the ranking for last year. And now we are going to go ahead and take a look at what happened. Did my video die? Oh, There we go. Hello. Now we're going to take a look at this year's data. Actually, before we get to this year's, as I said, I now am going to reveal Optic, Echo Fox, and Clutch total salaries for last year, as they were at the time of spring 2019 regular split, because this data comes out in spring regular split. That's when I got it. So again, this is not necessarily reflective of changes that they might have made at the end of spring or before summer or whatever. I also realize that in revealing this data, you now will be able to. I'm not a fool. I realize that you will now be able to take. Wait, hang on. I realize you'll be able to take this data, which I have provided you, and the data I am about to provide you, to provide a range of potential of what the other teams were paying, because you can kind of do the math backwards and say, okay, well, we know they had this money, whatever. I'm going to let other people do that data because I don't really want to do it. I also just want to say, like, I still think that you'll be able to figure out ranges for the teams from last year, which I think will be very interesting. But I also know that, as I will get into, the salaries have changed dramatically between last year and this year. So I would not necessarily look at that data from last year and think, okay, well, these were the ranges of what this team was paying last year. Maybe that's what they're paying now. So for instance, Cloud9, as I referenced, like, because of the ruling, they had to get rid of all the equity from all the player contracts, other than maybe Sneaky, I think, who obviously is not on the LCS roster this year. And so the amount that they are paying has increased dramatically from last year in terms of LCS salary, I think in part because of the equity change. So anywho, let's go ahead and take a look at these Clutch, Echo Fox, and Optic numbers. And once I'm gonna pause between each of these and look at Twitch chat for their reactions. So last year, and again, this doesn't include coaches, etc. It doesn't include, I don't know, but the other thing, it doesn't include bonuses. So for instance, if a team was to say, hey, we're going to pay you, player, $250,000 a year, plus if you get us to Worlds, we will pay you another $100,000, like that, those bonuses are not necessarily reflected in this data. So Optic last year. Here we go. As of spring, they were spending a little over 1 million on their roster. I just received a question in Twitch chat, which is this include Academy? No, it doesn't. This is just LCS. All right, so Optic was a little over $1 million. Echo Fox was 1,100,000. Oh, yeah, yes. Yeah, sorry. I was just double checking something. There we go. Finally, we've got Clutch. So this team came in at $1.7, a little bit over 1.7 million. So now that we have this information, I acknowledge that people can go back and they can use this information to figure out where stuff was. So you can see that Clutch, based off of how much money they were spending versus how they were performing, that pushed them pretty down on the standings, down to C9, whereas obviously Echo Fox was not spending that much, and so that got them up to third place in spring. Yeah, by the way, I am really happy I chose this still for my video. Okay. Next up, we've got the ranking of the teams. I think I've given enough context on all this stuff, but here's some extra data for you guys before we get into this. Everyone is up this year except for Golden Guardians and 100T. So everyone is spending more money than they did last year, and that includes the swapping out the 3 teams. So whoever took the 3 teams is spending more, increase their spend than the teams before them. So you can now kind of get the idea of where those teams are at. Now it's time to rank. You guys know my methodology. Let's get into it. So, the least efficient team was, maybe to nobody's surprise, CLG. So CLG, they actually burst out laughing. I mean, I feel bad for the players, but I went and I did all this math this morning, and they got 3 wins in spring. So it is really difficult to do this. Now, I believe this data might be from before they swapped Crown and Pobelter. So I don't know what kind of impact that have, but I can't imagine it would do too much for them. So it's just like the number you're going to get is going to be pretty big compared to like a team that got 10 wins or 8 wins or whatever. So that's why we end up with CLG in 10th place. Next up is Team Liquid. So Team Liquid, they got 7 wins, but they spent, I'm okay saying this, more than any other team on their roster, right? And I don't think that's that crazy to say, because you know that this is a team that, like the whole meme is that Steve is willing to spend a lot to get the players that he wants. Now, again, there have been roster changes. This number's probably gone down since we no longer have Double Lift on the team, but this is indicative of what their spring efficiency was. So that's where that goes. Dignitas. So as a lot of people might be aware, Dignitas, the rumors around salary and stuff like that, pretty significant amount of money on their roster. I guess with the Huni stuff and all that. Their team won 8 games, so more than TL, but only by 1. But they spent, less than TL, so you get an extra win. You spent less, it bumps you up in efficiency, but not enough to get you up pretty high. In 7th place. So FlyQuest actually got 10 wins. And again, this is not indicative of playoffs. So if you want to give them extra credit points, or you want to put an asterisk here or whatever, because obviously they made it to the finals, feel free to do that. That's not how I'm doing my methodology, so whatever. Complain in the YouTube comments. I know you will anyway. So FlyQuest got 10 wins, but they had a pretty big increase in their spend from last year to this year, which again, like, maybe is representative of what we've seen out of FlyQuest this year, because it does feel as though they are more committed to their LCS team than normal. And so that's the thing, is like, I always want to caution people in looking at these numbers, because I think a lot of people will just be like, well, I've decided that the team, this is not necessarily representative of the value of these teams or whatever. Like in some cases, it's representative of their commitment to the league, where they're willing to spend more because they want to get the results or whatever. So you can interpret this however you want, and fans will. FlyQuest fans, for instance, will say, look, it's great that they're spending so much more. FlyQuest haters, I guess, will be like, haha, you spent so much, and like you only got the 10 wins, so it pushes you down. Next up at number 6 is Evil Geniuses. So again, another situation where like FlyQuest, they went pretty far in playoffs, but they spent a lot of money to get this on this roster, and they got 10 wins, much like FlyQuest. So you can kind of do the math based off of FlyQuest versus Evil Geniuses to figure out which one of them spent more. But that's where we're at now, is Evil Geniuses in 6th in terms of efficiency. All right, so at 5 we have Immortals. So Immortals had 8 wins, which is not super high. It's the same amount of wins that Dignitas had, and it's 1 more than TL had. But their salary was significantly lower than some of the, big name teams. So that's kind of how you end up in that situation. And Yeah, I mean that allows you to get an idea of, okay, Dignitas and IMT had the same amount of wins, but IMT is ranked so much higher up here, which gives you an idea of the differential in their salaries. 100 Thieves. Wait, I'm just gonna put 100 Thieves. I don't know how they like to style it. So 100 Thieves got 10 wins, which is the same number of wins that EG and FlyQuest did, but they are higher up on this board because very obviously they spent less money than those teams. So that's what allows them to end up in this spot on the board. Interestingly, as I said before, everyone spent more money in 2020 than in 2019, except for Golden Guardians and 100 Thieves. So credit to Papa Smithy. If you recall, 100 Thieves, I think, was placed 9th on my 2019 standing. This year, obviously, they did much better in spring than they did in spring last year with less money. So there you go. Number 3 is TSM. There you go. So TSM had 9 wins, which nobody else got 9 wins, but you can kind of compare it against some of the teams that got 8 and 10 to figure out how they ended up in this position. So that is that's your standing for number 3. Second highest or second most efficient was C9. Most efficient was Golden Guardians. There you go, folks. So a couple things. Remember that Golden Guardians was able to bring their academy player into the support position. So I think, and as I mentioned, everyone is up this year except for Golden Guardians and 100 T. So presumably because of the support change, that allowed Keith to, or that allowed them to drop the salary spend down. And then Cloud9, as I mentioned last year, they were really low on the salary rankings, in part because their players were getting compensated in equity. This year, even though they got 17 wins, their salary spend went up dramatically. And so that's what allows Cloud9 to come in second most efficient and Golden Guardians to come in first. So once again, I think there are a lot of things that everybody can take. Almost every team, I would say, except for CLG, their fans can have something good to say about it, right? Like the teams that are lower on these rankings are generally, because everyone got at least 7 wins, and almost, except for if you don't count TL and CLG, every team got at least 8 wins. They, like, you can say that these teams that are lower on the rankings, like, hey, look, our team is spending a lot to try to get good players, you know? I think the teams that are higher up on it, like a C9 fan can say, look, our team has put up great results, and we didn't have to like dramatically overspend to get those results. And, you know, like a Golden Guardians fan can say, hey, we're doing good with a budget roster, you know, better than, for instance, like, because they got 8 wins, right? Like Immortals and Dignitas, which are at 5 and 8 on this, got the same amount of wins, you know. So Golden Guardians getting that first place with that. So it just sort of depends. I think everybody has. One of the reasons I like doing this stuff is because I think it sparks discussion, etc. Oh, the other thing that's very important to say. I understand that there are perhaps some people who will be watching this video and have the ability to remove it from popular places in which it would be great for it to be discussed, and then perhaps they would allow it only if another website just wrote a news article about it and just submitted that. I will say that my understanding is you have to have a editor-in-chief at your organization in order to do this. And that is why I'm so happy to say that my editor-in-chief, Mark Zimmerman, if I ever need to, I can show the call log on Discord. I had a conversation with my editor-in-chief, Mark Zimmerman, before the start of the stream, where I showed him the numbers and the math and how we get here. And I'm happy to say that he permitted me to disclose this information in this manner. So shout out to my editor-in-chief, Mark Zimmerman. I hope that people, you know, can really respect the work that he did today. Either way, thanks everyone for watching this video. You can check out more of my stuff here. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're watching this over on YouTube. If you're watching it on Twitch, please subscribe on Twitch. And also, shout out to Alienware, alienware.com/Travis. They actually just announced 3 big upgrades. So now their Area 51M has new stuff in it. The M15 and M17s, we use M15 for all of our stuff, has a bunch of cool upgrades to it. I think it's even thinner than the one that I have. And then also their Aurora machines now have new stuff in it. So shout out to Alienware. You can go check it out over at alienware.com/Travis. And also, if you were having issues with the Travis 10 off code, we should be good there now. You should be able to use it. I don't know. I can't promise that it'll work on all the brand new stuff because I think sometimes those things have discounts unavailable for a little bit. I don't know. You'll have to try it yourself and see if that works. But go check out their stuff over at alienware.com/Travis. There's a link in the video description below. This has been my 2020 version of this video. Can't wait till 2021 to do the next one.